Recording. All right, so welcome everyone for our March masterclass. And this is on using automation to make your life easier. We have Paul Taubman, who's our Chief Online Strategist at Digital Maestro, which is a website and online strategy company located in Somerville, New Jersey. Paul's an international speaker, presenter, and trainer focusing on website strategy and online marketing. Paul speaks internationally and teaches businesses and individuals how to make more money with their websites. From building websites to online marketing, to website security, to content marketing, and so much more, Digital Maestro can help you with almost every aspect of your business being online. Your stress levels will melt away after working with Paul as you take control of your website and turn it into a profit machine. Thank you, Paul, for being our master mentor today and teaching this, and for being a part of our NLBP community for so long. Yeah, no problem. So I have to say, I'm going to start off by saying I got a kick out of when I got the invite, when I registered for this. It said using automation to make your life easier with Paul Taubman. And I thought, man, my wife would love to make her life easier with Paul Taubman, but I guess it's all about conjunctions or pronoun. I don't know what the deal is, but let me share my screen to start. There we go. Okay. Gosh, everything's jumping all over. So, yep. Welcome. I'm here to talk about automation. We have people from all kinds of different backgrounds, so it's going to be fun and interesting to talk about this. Some people are using a little bit, some of it aren't using anything, and it's always interesting to present to such a diverse audience. So I'm going to try my best to get started with that. So before we get started, first and foremost, I got my new little banner update there. Look at that, 6+ years with NLBP, sold professional. So it's happy to be here for that. But other than that, there's a couple other reasons why you should listen to me. Personally, I've built over, actually that's old now, that should be thousands of websites, optimized just as many of those. We've got a team in place that helps run the business to do a lot of this stuff. We're handling social media strategy. We do website work, security, all that kind of good stuff, as well as starting to get into some video advertising. So been doing this for a long time now and just having fun helping people get the visibility that they need and deserve online, as well as optimizing, streamlining, and just getting their process to a point where their business is running like a well-oiled machine. All right, so with that started, let's get going with this. By the way, I think there was a mistake. This actually is a 4-hour presentation, so don't worry, we will be done by dinner here on the East Coast. I've got about 219 slides to get through, so we might actually finish a little bit earlier, so don't worry about that. All right, I'm going to start off with some of the basics. So if anybody has ever heard of Vince Lombardi, football coach, every season he would start out, he would hold up a football to his team and go, gentlemen, this is a football, right? So we're not going to be that rudiment and basic, but just give you an idea of what automation is. And primarily this is going to be focusing around marketing because I had to narrow the scope somehow. Right? I had to make it so that if we talked about automating everything in your business, then this would be like a week-long seminar, which can't fit all of that into a simple hour. So as you can see here, automation in marketing refers to the use of software and technology in streamlining and automating repetitive tasks and processes involved in marketing. This can include tasks such as email marketing, social media posting, lead generation, data analysis, and more. All right, well, if we look at this a little bit easier, like what does all that mean? Well, automation in marketing just means using computers to help people do their marketing jobs faster and better, right? Using tools that are designed to help your business deliver, there's certain things that you want it to do, right? We can make things kind of sterile and generic and, sound very impersonal. So when we're going to be talking about this, you want to deliver personalized and targeted content to your audience at the right time. So that's also important, the timing of when we do this. And you want to really try to figure out what you want to improve upon. Is it engagement? Is it conversion rates? Is it just interaction with some of your content, getting the phone to ring, developing new prospects? These are the kind of things that you want to think about, because a lot of the tools that we're going to be talking about typically rely on some sort of data analytics and some sort of algorithms or some schedules or something to figure that out. How you tag your clients, your prospects, making sure that you know who's who, who's whom, whom's who, I don't know, whatever that is, and figuring out how to automate the delivery of that message that you want to send to them, and so that it's targeted. Okay. I think that when you start to think about how you can automate these tasks, you can save time and resources, and also actually become more effective with your marketing campaigns. So that's going to be important. And additionally, your marketing automation can actually help your business scale your efforts, reach more people, a wider audience, and it's not going to require you to increase your resources. Okay, so that's kind of a whole bunch of, even though I said, let's narrow this down, it's a little bit easier to understand. When I say all those words, it's, it also seems like it's a lot to do. So I think here it is in the simplest terms. If you're Cars fans, we just want to get her done, right? You want to get the job done efficiently, effectively. And this is going to be really important, or maybe the most important thing, especially if you have a limited staff, or maybe it's just you, right? And that's okay too. One thing to point out is that as we go through some of these things, I'm going to use words like your system or your process. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have some automated, computerized digital system. A system can be anything, as simple as having a checklist that you write things down about. And yep, I did that, and having a process in place. Camille is always talking about her system, and she holds up this piece of paper with all her scribbling on it, which is great, right? And then when you have a system, no matter how manual it is, then you can do the automation. A lot of times people make the mistake of getting an automated system and then trying to force what you do into that system. And that's not going to be the best. Now, that can help if you have no idea what to do, right? Having that process in place can give you a framework that you can start out with and actually guide you, maybe using some best practices of what needs to get done to get you going in that right direction. And as we talk about tools, there's going to be many choices to do different things. And if you start out with one and find out, because you don't have your own real process, you might find that you're switching to something else because it doesn't meet your needs that you didn't even know you had at that point. So always give yourself some breathing room and go, it's okay. It's all a learning process. Let's just kind of go through and see where things go. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. Well, as I'm talking about automation, there's various areas. Okay, so we can talk about sales and marketing. And that's primarily what I'm going to be talking about. Again, just for brevity and scope. Otherwise, we'll be here all week. There's things that you can do with financial automation, right? If you use QuickBooks, you can do that for your billing and have that automatically sent out when you create an invoice or schedule that. So those are types of financial automations. Operations in your business. Maybe it's a workflow that when you're doing some sort of project management, if you do have another team member or a full team, you want to make sure that you have processes in places so that maybe there's 5 things that has to get done and they're assigned to 5 different people. Well, one type of automation is that when the first person finishes his or her task, it automatically notifies the next person of what they have to do. If you've got a team of 5 more, or even just 2, there can be processes for HR and employee management. For example, having a process in place to automatically do your payroll, calculate the taxes, the FICA, all that good stuff. It's a lot easier to do once it's set up in a process that's automated than having to calculate that every single week or every other week or every month. Okay. So when we talk about, again, specifically the marketing automation, so all of these here, have sub levels that are different. So if we take a look at the marketing automation, just some areas that I was thinking about, and if anybody has questions about, other areas, feel free to interrupt me or put it into the chat. I've got that up on this computer over here. So if I look over here, that's what I'm looking at. For lead generation and capturing prospects, right? Maybe it's for your email marketing campaigns. Okay. If you ever do any special, or as we like to say, specialty media marketing, some special media marketing, you can automate that. Website and landing page optimizations, right? There are processes and things that can be automated so that as soon as you start to do that, things will happen automatically. And then that way it frees you up from doing all the little things, right? I met with a new client last week, and their process, when somebody opts into their list, they get an email that they then type into their system, and they put their name and their email address, and they also capture address for some things. So they are literally keying everything else in. Well, having some simple automation that automatically feeds that is going to help save them a lot of time. How much time? Well, that's going to depend on a couple of things, right? Number one, how fast do they type? How many people are opting in? How frequently is this? Is there any validation? And all those types of things. Okay. So we can talk about some of the tools and products for automation as we go through some of these things. And just to start to list some of these off, you may have some of these, which is great, and you may not. So a CRM, or a customer relations management system, this is where you're able to keep track of all of your names and addresses, phone numbers, emails. A lot of times people call this a database, right? So it's a system that can handle a lot of the automation of this. Some of the CRMs, as we'll see, will be able to do more things than others. And with anything, the more functionality, it could possibly cost more per month. Or if you're buying the system or however you're paying for it, it may be more because it does more, or it may be less. Always try things out if there's a trial period, because as you know, expensive does not always mean that it's the best. So with that said, I'm just going to ask quickly, does anybody have a CRM? What kind of CRMs do you have and what do you use? Anyone?
I'll talk, Paul. It's Camille. I have a CRM, but I also do my little piece of paper with colored pens.
Okay, that's what I was referring to earlier.
That's what works best for me, no matter how many. We do use CRMs for other things, like when people become members, we spit out onboarding. But
Yep.
with my own sales tracking, I just use colored pens.
Okay. Yeah, and so thank you for vocalizing that. There's a lot of things in the chat. Notion is relatively-ish newer, and that's doing a lot. That can, the way you configure that and how you put in your tasks and different processes, that's kind of up and coming, if you will. CRM Pipeline Drive, dub.com is used for video. Some people are just using simple old-fashioned Excel and Trello, which again are great ways to track things. The best CRM is one that you're going to use. So if you think, oh, I'm going to go out and buy the premier CRM, well, that's not going to do you any good if you get flustered with it, if you don't know how to use it, if it just doesn't make sense for what you do. Honeybrook, Marianne says, is another great system that's relatively simple and easy to get started with. Okay. Karen, ActiveCampaign, is sort of a CRM, and we're going to talk about that. right? Is it a CRM? Is it an autoresponder? Some of these tools as we go through kind of blur the lines as far as does it fit into one category or another, right? Marketing automation tools is another. So a CRM can do some marketing and automation, or it can be sort of a standalone system to do those emails, your autoresponders, your lists, and that kind of stuff. And we'll get into the specifics of those. And these are, by the way, I'm going to list probably a handful of these. This is not an all-encompassing list. This might be more for some, what am I trying to say? This could be an overwhelming list for some, and some might go, oh yeah, I knew that. But again, I'm trying to tailor this to what I thought you all would be interested in. So at any point, feel free to put into the chat or unmute yourself and just interrupt me. Okay. Another thing I think that a lot of people can use but don't is a scheduling tool, right? And this is allowing people to book time with you for whatever it might be, right? That's another great place for automation. If you think about if you don't have it or before you had one, think about all the time that sort of gets wasted going back and forth, especially in email. Hey, let's get together Wednesday at 3. Oh, I can't do that. Can you do it early at 2:30? Nope, I got another class that I'm attending. How about if we do it later at 5 o'clock? Oh, no, that won't work. I have to go pick up, right? And you just go back and forth and back and forth. And it might not seem like much, but if you calculate all the time and the hassle that happens, the scheduling tools can make things a lot easier. Okay. All right. I see some votes in love for Calendly for the calendar system. Yep. It's definitely a popular one, and we'll talk about that. Accounting and bookkeeping software. So I mentioned this before, and some of you mentioned this. The accounting bookkeeping software is going to allow you, one, to help with your, accounting and bookkeeping. And depending on how things get invoiced, you may be able to automatically collect the money or press a button, send out that invoice, let people pay automatically online with a credit card or via PayPal, right? Having that is a lot easier in many cases than hitting the print button, print this invoice, getting that from your printer, tri-folding it, putting it in an envelope, handwriting it, finding the stamps. Oh, I don't have enough stamps anymore. Got to go to the post office, buy a book of stamps, take a stamp, put it on it, mail it out, wait and hope that you're going to get paid, right? Well, even if you send out an electronic way where they can pay online, you might still have to hope to get paid, but it's going to streamline the process. And it's these little things that you want to do to make your life much easier. If you're dealing with a team, payroll software is going to be nice to have, right? For obvious reasons, or maybe not so obvious, but as I mentioned before, you being able to have your state and the state where your employees are, or your contractors, or however you're paying them, right? That's going to make a difference. Paying an employee is much different than paying a 1099 contractor. Now, this may be built into your accounting and bookkeeping software, right? So that's kind of all integrated. This may be built into your CRM if it's taking care of HR properties and duties. So again, this is where things kind of flip around and overlap, and think of it as one massive big Venn diagram problem from high school math. Gives me shivers. Inventory management. If you're selling physical products, you obviously would like to have, again, it may not be obvious, you would want to have some sort of inventory management so that as something gets sold, it decreases your inventory. I see this a lot when there's people who are selling things either on, so the big three that I've seen, actually 4 now, people sell things on their website. And these are, anything from things that their own products that they've created or they're outsourced and they're selling. So they sell it on their website, which makes it nice and easy. When you have just one source or one distribution channel, it makes it easy. Somebody buys it from there, you know what you got. Well, they're also selling the same product on Etsy. They're also putting it up on eBay. And then they're also using FBA or fulfilled by Amazon. They have an Amazon store. So what they were doing is they were taking every time something got sold, they just basically had a master inventory sheet that they would print out every week. And then they would go, oh, sold one of these. Oh, sold 3 of these. And then they would have to go to each system and update what their inventory count was. Okay. Now, again, that works. It's a long process. But once we integrated all of those together, it made it so much easier because they didn't have to do anything. And they weren't missing something. So when an order came in late at night, the person who was doing the tallying, if they missed that email, sometimes they had to wait for things and tell people it was on back ordered, even though the website said it was available. And as you can see, oy, oy, oy. All right. And then finally, just some project management software that we sort of talked about. I think it was David. Let me scroll through. David, you were the one you talked about. Trello. Trello can kind of be used as that for different tasks that get done, especially if they're either sequential or they kind of move around. You can use that, or you can use software that's automatically assigning things to people, right? The idea is to think about what your needs are and what you want it to do. Once you have that, think of that as your checklist for when you go shopping for different types of tools. Okay. These tools here that we mentioned, some of them might be, again, useful in your world, what your business is doing, depending on how big or small you are. And some might not be that, might be overkill. No need for payroll software if it's just you. Also, it depends on what type of business entity and structure you are too, right? So that's a topic for another day. Okay. Asana, Delina, if I said your name right, I hope so. Asana is a great project management tool. Basecamp's another one. Teamworks, there's a whole bunch of them out there. And again, most of them fortunately give you a little bit of a trial so that you can try that. And that's not just in the project management software world, but all of these. So that's kind of the overview. Right. I mentioned that what we want to talk about here is going to be specifically, the marketing. So let's, if this is good for all of those, what about the marketing automation? Okay. Well, when it comes to the marketing automation, I'm going to back up and say, yep, the email relationship, the CRM is definitely going to be something that you want to do or have a system for it, right? To figure out what people are buying. So a CRM can also be your shopping cart, meaning it's going to handle your product sales. And if it is, when somebody makes a sale, you can send out the email. It can handle the inventory if that's the only source that things are going on. Okay. So your CRM kind of is the overall encompassing type of thing. Email marketing automation software. So Karen, you mentioned, right? It was Karen. I'm scrolling up and down. Active Campaign is definitely one that you can use for email marketing and automation. So with that, there are ways where you can set up a sequence of emails and have things go out on the first day, and then the third day, and then the 8th day, and then the 12th day, and then send something out every week automatically. So you set it up once, and then it's good to go. Which brings up a good point that when you use automation to save time, a lot of times it'll help prevent mistakes, manual mistakes from happening. But when you do this thinking, oh, I'm going to have so much time, be forewarned that setting up the automation is going to take more time. It's kind of that oxymoron. Is that right? The oxymoron? Yeah. Where you're doing something because you want to save the time, but it's actually initially to set it up, it takes more time. Kind of like onboarding a new employee. You think, oh, great. Now there's 2 of us. I'm going to have twice as much time to do things because half of my time is going to go to somebody else. But when you onboard that new person, it's a lot of work, right? You have to guide them and go through your process, your procedures, and train them and do all that kind of stuff. The same thing is true with your automation tools. There's always going to be a learning curve. I don't care what anybody says, oh, this is a simple system to learn. It's always going to be a learning curve of some sort. So just kind of keep that in mind. Social media scheduling and automation tools. This is a great way that you can save some time by scheduling your automating social media. A lot of times people go, oh, I don't have time for social media. Well, if you got a tool that would help you do that, you could set it up so that as soon as you post something, or depending on what you want to post, let's say your blog post, it can automatically tweet those out or post those on Facebook or share it on LinkedIn. And you don't even have to bother doing that. That's going to help you get some more visibility as you go through your day, right? So, it takes a lot of time to write those blog posts or create that content. Set up the automation where you just send it maybe to one place, and then like magic, it distributes it throughout all the different platforms where you want to be found. Next up are website optimization tools and plugins, right? So I just talked about doing things with your blog posts or your articles. If you're creating them there, there may be a tool or a way on your website or a plugin that will say, oh, you just posted something, great. Let's automatically send it out again to the social media places. Or if you create a video and you're posting it there, automatically let people know. If you have a membership site and you add new content, as soon as that content gets added, wouldn't it be nice if you didn't have to worry about automatically thinking, or if you didn't have to worry about now notifying all the members who are part of that program, right? Your website can automatically do that. So these are some of the tools, some of the areas that you can think about, that I was thinking about that you could use. Obviously, there's a lot more. Again, this might be overkill. Is anybody thinking of anything else before I kind of move on with some things? You can just type it into the chat, or I'll just keep going. Just keep swimming and swimming and swimming and swimming. All right. So we've been talking about, or I've been doing a lot of talking about figuring out the automation and the different type of tools and which ones you can use and what you can't use. And again, it's just a subset of the myriad of options that are available out there. Let's talk about actually implementing some of this automation, what's going to happen, right? Or best practices of what you should do. Number one, I already touched on touch base on with evaluating what you need to do for your business, right? And that goes back to having that manual process in place to know what works for you, so that you can kind of go shopping and you have your checklist of, okay, here's what my email marketing tool needs to do, or here's what I want in a CRM, right? If you, for example, and I'll get to the specifics of what I use, may not be what I suggest for everybody, but in my CRM, I actually have an affiliate program, which means people can sell products for me and they automatically get a commission, right? And it calculates that and it handles all that. That may not be something that you need. So you don't have that on your list of needs. That might be on a list of nice to haves, or it might be on a list of no way, I don't even want to touch that. I just want to do what I do by myself and just chug along because that's what makes me happy. So figure out what you need first and then go looking for the tools. After you do that, well, this is when the work comes in to actually setting up the automation and what you want it to do. Right? So this is the time-consuming piece. As Kelly said, this is your upfront investment of time. Actually, all of this is still upfront because evaluating, figuring out, that's going to take some time as well. Once you have it set up, and this may be as part of this setting the process up, you're going to need to train yourself and or your team on how to use the tools, right? Some of them will be set it and forget it, which is great. Others may need some loving care as you go along to tweak things. Generally speaking, the way you first set something up, it will evolve and change over time. So it really does what you want. right? Once you see the impact and how things work, you go, oh, I wonder if we tweak this, what would happen, and does that make things better? And the answer is probably, yeah, it will happen. And then finally, what you want to do, and I'm a big proponent of this, is always measuring your results, right? Kind of take a look and say, how do we do? Did it actually save time? And was it worth it? Now, if you can figure this out even before you start the automation, that's going to be great, but sometimes you can't. And this is where you're looking at the process of, okay, when I was doing it manually, right, some things might be a no-brainer. It took me 3 hours every week to transfer the list of people from here and put them onto this list because it was so manual. And now when it's automated, it just happens, right? That's a great, easy measurement. Other times it may not be as clear, but then you kind of take a look at what you did, how it worked. And this is where it becomes almost like a feedback loop where you can kind of go back and say, okay, now let's tweak it a little bit more and see what the results are. Can it get done? All right. As you're doing this, there's some sort of best practices that are good to consider as you're going through this. Instead of just throwing yourself in wholeheartedly, try, if you can, to follow some of these. And I saw that Camille put in there in the chat, if we just automate one thing at a time, it's going to help with your momentum. It will. And you want to start small and focus on that one thing. Don't automatically think, great, today is Thursday, I'm going to start researching tomorrow and get a new email tool, a social media tool, a CRM, a payroll system, an HR system, right? And just try to do all this stuff at once. You're going to go crazy, especially if you still have to run your business, right? That's going to take a lot of time. So just pick one area, the one thing. That's a plug for the good book. If you haven't read that yet, the one thing. And a lot of times when I'm talking with clients, they'll say, well, which one do I want first? We talked about scheduling. We talked about email. We talked about the CRM. It really depends on what is your biggest pain point, right? Actually, there's two ways to look at this. What's your biggest pain point? So let's automate that process first. So that'll help be a big relief. Or the other thing is, what's an easy win that you can go with? Sometimes if you're doing your calendar manually, that could be the easiest win right there. You could set that up in a day or two and be off and running. And that's going to be some of the momentum that Camille was talking about in the chat, right? Once you get that, you go, oh, this is good. I like this. I've been using a calendar tool now for, I don't know, since I started my business, I think. No, it wasn't since I started, because I remember the pain of going back and forth. And there weren't many options out there. This was before Calendly and Acuity and some of the others, but it definitely helps. Set some clear goals and objectives, always a good thing to do, right? Maybe this also includes planning out how much time you're going to give this, how many tools you're going to evaluate, what you wanted to do. Enter data accurately, and security is also going to be important when you're doing and you're setting things up. You want to make sure about that. And then we've talked about this a couple of times already. Reevaluate on a regular basis and optimize the process that you've set. Okay. There's something else that you should also think about, and talk about this a bit more. Think about what you're optimizing, what you're automating. Is it necessary, or is this just like it's fun to know? And a good example of this is and I'll talk about this some more as well. I use Slack, and I have a channel so that every time somebody opts in, as an example for my gratitude burst at allaboutgratitude.com. When somebody signs up for it, I get a notification that says, oh, somebody signed up. Now, I set that up. I took a little bit of time, put that in place. And I was like, oh, this is nice. Is it necessary? No, not really. Because when people sign up, I don't necessarily need to know, because all of that is completely automated. People can sign up, they can unsubscribe, they can do whatever they want with those things. knowing somebody signed up at the time just felt like, oh, this is, validation. And a long time ago, it was nice to know, because I'm sure many of you, and I've talked to some of you, go, I don't even know if people are reading my blog posts. I don't know if anybody's coming to my website. So when somebody opted in the early days, it's like, oh my gosh, I want to know every time that happens. Well, now every time I get a message in my Slack, I'm like, oh, okay, yep, there goes somebody else. There goes somebody else. So it's not necessarily fun. In this case, it's just fun to know. And along with that, just be careful of your shiny object syndrome, right? This is kind of where I go into is it necessary? Once you start looking at some of these tools and you get on people's list, they're going to be recommending other things and this, and you go, oh, I need that. I need that. Well, do you really? Or is it just new hype, right? Is it just the new tool of the day? So always just keep that in mind and ask yourself, especially for those of you who know AppSumo and they have these lifetime deals or they're great deals on tools, and a lot of the things that we're talking about here, they offer deals over there, and you go, oh, I need that. I need that. Well, before you buy anything on AppSumo or any other marketplace, ask yourself, will I be implementing this in the next month? And if you don't have any plans to implement in the next month, I would just say, pass on that. You're going to be better off. Okay. Is there a chart or a checklist to help in those decisions? Oh, that's a good question. As I said, it really depends, Kelly, on what you're looking to do, where you are in your business, and do you want the big pain point to be solved first, or do you want to get a quick win to kind of get things going and that sort of thing? Okay. All right, next up then, and this is probably what a lot of people want to know. Well, great. What tool do you use? So let's talk about some of them, some specifics, and how and what to use to make your life more miserable. I mean, more awesome, right? So again, I'm going to forewarn you that starting anything new can be uncomfortable and might not work at first. It might lead to what seems like a big failure, but stick with it, learn from your mistakes, and just test, and test. Okay, this is where it's going to take a little extra time. And the first tool I'm going to recommend, as I put up there, is human people. Hire somebody. That, in a sense, is a form of automation for you, because you can easily ask somebody or tell somebody, hey, email the list about the promotion that's coming up, and delegate it. I know this is a hot topic in a lot of the calls, the what's working, what's not, and why. People are always asking, oh, but I'm not ready to hire somebody. You can get a virtual assistant with as few as 2 hours a week, maybe even 3 hours a week. There's a whole variety of people that are out there and the amount of time. For example, on my team, we are now a team of 5. I have somebody who is full-time. I have somebody who is, actually, she's more than full-time now, I think. And then I have somebody who's part-time, and just whatever I give him, he does. Right. So his hours are always fluctuating depending on what I need done. And then I have the fourth person. She really maybe only does work because of the task that she's doing, maybe 2 to 3 hours. And I know that I can just explain something to them and they go off and running. For some of these things, you don't have to be the one to research or to figure things out. When you delegate it to somebody and say, take a look at this tool, see what you think about it. Now, this works best when you're working with somebody that knows the business and knows what you've been doing. Or you can hire somebody who's proficient in those types of tools to figure it out. Okay. So always consider, can I outsource this to somebody else? And outsourcing could be, as I mentioned, to a VA. It can be to a company that handles those kind of things. So that's probably the best way to get things done. It's probably also the way that people go, oh, I don't want to do that. So with that said, which tools to use? We talked about calendar scheduling and booking, right? So we've already talked about these. First off, the one that I use is Time Trade. Okay, these are in no particular order. I told you kind of in transparency that I will let you know what I use. It's probably one of the oldest on this list, but it's what I use. Lots of people are Calendly fans. We saw in the chat. Acuity is another great one. These all have, I'm pretty sure they all have a free version as well as a premium or paid version. Okay. When you're looking through these, think about, again, what do you need in this? Do you need multiple types of appointments? In my system, as well as Calendly and Acuity, they will say, you know what, you get one type of event that you want to let people schedule for. When you pay, you can have an event for a strategy session. You can have a calendar or different type of events for just coaching calls. You can have one for one-to-ones, and each one can be scheduled at different times. If you just need to figure out when people are available to get together, especially when you have 3 or 4 people, there's a site called Doodle, which will allow you to set up various times that you might want to meet, and you ask your team or members to say, when are you available? And they'll be able to check off, and wherever that intersection of everybody is, or most people, boom, you know that that's a good time. Okay. So those are calendars. Oh, and then Pick Time is another one. Supposedly it's free. I've never used it, but I saw that it was available. Whoop, I don't know what happened here. These are email programs. And when you think about email, you want to think about, what do you want to do? Do you want the automation? If you have an opt-in form, there we go. If you have an opt-in form, you want something that will automatically send out whatever you're offering to them immediately. There are some systems or some levels in these systems that will say at your level, you have to manually send that out. So people these days are expecting that when they opt into something, they get that free offer. I use Keep for this. It's expensive. It's very difficult. You probably need a consultant to set it up and configure it. So you want to stay away from that. Constant Contact, Aweber, MailChimp, iContact, Active Campaign is another one that's on here. Interport is another one. Okay. ConvertKit, thank you. When it comes to CRMs, okay, as I mentioned, Keep, and you're going to see some overlap. Like I said, HubSpot's another one. Active Campaign can do it as well. There's a new kid in town for about a year, maybe a little bit longer now, called ClickUp, which helps with a lot of the processes as well. Okay, so you can take a look at those. ClickUp has a free version that you can use. HubSpot has a free version. Active Campaign, I think, gives you a free trial, and I'm not sure about Keep. Okay. And finally, integrating between some of these tools is also helpful. And there's some tools that automatically have this that you might not even think about. Microsoft Office and Google Workspace, if you think about their products, a lot of them will integrate automatically together. So you can take a spreadsheet in Microsoft, in Excel, and pop it into PowerPoint. And when somebody updates that spreadsheet behind the scenes, it automatically gets updated in PowerPoint. So you don't even have to worry about, oh, let me go get that new data. It's available. The same thing is true with the Google Workspace products, right? With Sheets and Docs and Slides and their version of the products that Office has as well. Then there's a great tool called Zapier. Zapier is an integration between multiple tools and systems and different places where the data is in one place. It will say when somebody gets added to here, automatically add them into this completely unrelated tool, or send them an email out of Gmail or whatever. So take a look at Zapier. Slack is another one that I mentioned where a lot of notifications for some of these, especially with Zapier, can be sent over there. All right, so with that said, there's only 10 minutes to the top of the hour. So I will just open up for questions anybody may have. Either unmute yourself and talk, or just type it into the question of the chat. If anybody's interested, I'll just say this while you're either typing and or getting ready to unmute. If anybody wants to chat, you can go to digitalmaestro.com/web-audit. Typically, we talk about your website there, but if you wanted to just talk about some of these tools, we can certainly do that as well. Okay, that's complimentary. There's no cost, and it's just kind of as a follow-up to this, because there was a lot of information, a lot of things given, and that's it.
Thank you, Paul. This was pretty amazing, just like you.
Oh, go on.
It was great. I know one of the things someone asked in the chat was, how do you know what to automate first? Which was a good question.
Yeah, so again, what's causing you the most grief? That could be, but if it's highly complicated, you might want to go for something nice and simple. Right?
Yeah.
Like the calendar, that could be something good. So just ask yourself, what, if you're really struggling, just go, what is the biggest pain in my butt? And let's get that solved. That could be one way to do it.
Yeah. I can tell people from our personal experience, I do not have an automated calendar, because to me, that's a pain in the ass. Right. So that just doesn't work for me. I always ask for other people's calendar link. But we had to also automate like our onboarding sequences for all our different membership levels. That took an incredible amount of time, but now saves an incredible amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes tackling those bigger things. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions for Paul before we wrap up?
About any tools or something we didn't talk about? Again, I just figured, what would most people want to know about? And if I didn't cover it, doesn't mean it's not important. It just means time.
Yeah.
May I ask a quick questions? Sorry. Well, this is all the great tools. I really enjoy all this consolidation about the functions and all the use. And one question I have, because everybody using the automated tools and they got flooded with all the emails, things like that. Is there any tool or even just strategies how we can increase the opening rates?
Oh, that is the $1 million question, right? How do we get the deliverability rate up? Right? There's all kinds of numbers with that. And I'd love to talk about that. And then how do you get them to open? And then once they open, how do you get them to click? And once they're on your website, how do you get them to buy?
That's a whole nother masterclass.
Yeah, talk to Camille, ask her to set that up. We can talk about that. I'll give you the easy way. Just pray. When you hit send, pray. It doesn't matter if you stop in every church and temple and mosque, just do that. That's the easiest way. But seriously, there's a lot of different things that you can do. Number one is first really check to see what the deliverability rate is. So when you send out 100 emails, you will know if 100 emails actually get to where they're going, right? And if they're not, or if you're getting a lot of bounce backs, then that's a technical reason that you can look into. Okay. Once you know how many people actually receive them, then you look at the open rate. Okay. The thing that affects the open rate the most, Sonny, is a lot of times who's sending it and what's the subject. If you think about yourself, how do you decide what you're going to read, what you're not going to read? You look and see who's sending it, and then what's the subject. So if you have your from name, not necessarily the email, but the name that says customer support, like that's the worst. How impersonal can that be? But if it comes from Paul of Digital Maestro, I like to think people go, oh, it's from Paul. Let me open this up, right? Or they'll consider opening it. Then they'll look at the subject, and then they'll decide, is this something that's worth my time right now, or am I going to come back to it later? And if they think I'm coming back to it later, there's a good chance they're going to forget it because they're going to get busy with everything else. So that's a whole topic in itself, but a great question.
Paul,
Yeah.
I have a question. I don't know if I missed this, but when you were talking about the social media, like posting scheduling, I don't remember you mentioning any programs or platforms for that. Did I
Nope, you
miss that?
Nope, you didn't miss it.
Okay.
I maybe I missed it, right? I didn't include anything with that. So with social media, there's different platforms that you can use.
Okay.
I give a self plug. If you go to relaxsocialmedia.com, we offer a platform for that. But there are also other platforms like Hootsuite, HOOTSUITE, that will do it. And if you just search for social media management, there's things that can do that. Again, depending on where you're sending or what you're doing it from, if you want, there's certain plugins that you can put on your website that automatically will handle social media like that for content that you've already done.
Okay.
And want to kind of repurpose it.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, sir. Woo. Oh, thank you very much, ma'am. Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you very much.
Does anyone have anything else before we wrap up?
Thank you for the kind words, Sarah. Sarah actually uses our service.
Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being our mentor today and talking all about this automation. You guys will get emailed the replay to this. We also put it on our YouTube channel, and it's also in our Learning Academy. So you can replay this if you need it or you missed information and want to go back. We do make that available to everyone. And just a reminder that we have these every single month. And next month, we are doing Shutting Down Your Inner Critic, Getting More Clients and Money with Meryl Hayton, who is an emotional freedom technique and optimal EFT. So she's a transformational coach that'll be going through all of that. So that is next month. If you signed up for this, you will get notification for that as well. So I want to thank everyone, Paul especially for being our mentor, but everyone else for joining us today. Hopefully we'll see you in the free Facebook group. If you have any questions, you can always @ Paul Taubman there and ask him a question. And he's always in there asking questions. He also was kind enough to put his email, paul@digitalmaestro.com, in the chat. And that's pretty much all we got. If you guys want to learn more about NLBP and our membership, feel free to join us at a meet and greet. We have one Monday evening, and it's just a small roundtable to answer your questions about membership with us and how we can help you build your business. That's all we got. Thank you,
very much,
everyone.
everybody.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying thank